Did you know that despite Kansas City being the most populated city in the whole state of Missouri and being almost 100 square miles bigger than Chicago, Illinois, Chicago has a population of about 2.6 million people compared to Kansas City's 510,000 people? This means that Chicago has a population density of about 11,400 people per square mile, which is over 7 times more dense than Kansas City's roughly 1,600 people per square mile. This isn't the only example of this either. In fact, there's actually a lot of huge, well-known cities in the U.S. in addition to Kansas City that are shockingly empty. So today on Across the Globe, we're going to be looking at why nobody lives in these 10 large, empty cities. For some context, the following list was compiled using cities that are both well-known and have a significant total land area. Also, to add some perspective, some of the United States' most densely populated large cities like New York City, San Francisco, and Boston have total land areas of 300.4, 46.9, and 48.3 square miles respectively, and population densities of about 27,000, 17,000, and 13,000 respectively. Number 10. Tucson, Arizona. Despite having a population of almost 547,000 people, Tucson's population density makes it one of the emptiest cities in the country. Here, the land area is approximately 241 square miles, meaning that its total population density is about 2,267 people per square mile. However, according to some recent research, Tucson's low population density may actually be a good thing, as it's pushing people who want to live in more densely populated areas to relocate there. Another thing that's interesting is that Tucson has actually seen a decline in its population density over the course of the past decade by 1.15%. That means that as a whole, the city is actually becoming less densely populated. One reason potentially explaining this decline is that Tucson has a fair amount of urban sprawl given its size. In other words, the city is quite spread out and continues to spread out, and that, coupled with its smaller population, means that it just isn't going to be that dense. Number 9. New Orleans, Louisiana. You might picture New Orleans being a crowded city with people packed into jazz bars or throngs of people out on the streets celebrating Mardi Gras. However, while this can be the case sometimes, especially given tourism, in general, it's a different story. And in fact, New Orleans is one of the least densely populated cities in America. Despite its pretty large population of about 369,750 people and land area of 169.5 square miles, New Orleans has a population density of only about 2,181 people per square mile. For comparison, remember that New York City has a population density that's about 12 times that. One potential reason for New Orleans' low population density may be the city's particularly troublesome history with hurricanes. For instance, after Hurricane Katrina devastated much of New Orleans in 2005, almost 100% of the city's total population was temporarily displaced. This then caused the total population to decrease from about 450,000 to approximately 208,000 people in 2006. While the population did shoot back up to 340,000 in 2010, it's possible that hurricanes may be keeping more people out of New Orleans than would otherwise live there. Another issue is crime. Wallet Hub recently ranked cities according to their homicide problems, and New Orleans came out number 14, indicating that crime is a pretty big concern here. Number 8. Memphis, Tennessee. Number 8 on our list is Memphis, Tennessee, which has a population density of 2,091 people per square mile. Unlike what we saw earlier with Tucson, the population density of Memphis has increased since 2010 by about 6.5%. The city's total population, on the other hand, has been dropping in recent years and is currently about 620,000, while its land area is 297 square miles. As a result of the city's overall population decline, it's possible that Memphis may become more empty than it already is. The reasons for Memphis's declining population and potential loss of population density as a result are varied. According to a moving company located in Memphis, one of the top reasons they've seen explaining why people are leaving Memphis is crime. For instance, while homicide rates decreased overall throughout the U.S. in 2023, in Memphis, these rates have increased by a factor of 3. According to another moving company, people are also leaving the city of Memphis because of a lack of job opportunities and increasing poverty rates, indicating a struggling economy. A recent study from the Milken Institute backed this up when they ranked Memphis number 135 out of 200 cities, according to factors like job growth, wage growth, and housing affordability. Number 7. Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you know anything about population levels by state, it's probably no surprise to you that Tulsa is one of the emptiest large cities in the U.S. That's because Oklahoma itself has one of the lowest populations in America, with only about 4 million residents. It also has the 16th lowest population density in America, with a density of about 58.63 people per square mile. For reference, New Jersey is the most densely populated state and has about 1,283 people per square mile. Looking specifically at the city of Tulsa, here the population density is 2,085 people per square mile, which has actually increased slightly from 2010 by approximately 1.67%. The city's population, meanwhile, is almost 412,000, and its land area is 197.5 square miles. Unlike what we saw in Memphis, which is seeing a decline in its population, Tulsa's population is actually growing faster than in many other parts of the country. Some of that has been driven by Tulsa's program, Tulsa Remote, which has offered people a $10,000 grant, along with other perks, to remote workers who agree to relocate to the area. However, the increasing number of people moving to Tulsa may be causing other repercussions like a lack of affordable housing. For instance, homelessness increased 6.6% in 2022 and has grown every year since 2015 except for 2021. Number 6. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Virginia Beach is one of those cities that feels a lot more populated than it actually is. That's particularly the case during the summer months, when most of the 13.6 million tourists who come to the city each year visit. Considering that this city's population is only about 455,000, relatively speaking, that's a huge number of tourists. The small number of Virginia Beach's year-round residents means that this city is one of the least populated cities in America, with a population density of 1,862. I will note, though, that number has actually been increasing since 2010 by about 2.45%. Part of the reason for Virginia Beach's low population density is that it has a relatively large land area at a little over 244 square miles. For reference, the most densely populated city in America, New York City, has a land area of about 270 square miles, yet a population of over 8 million people. Number 5. Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City, Missouri has a population density of 1,619, meaning that there are, on average, a little over 1,500 people located in a square mile. In total, the city has a population of a little over 500,000 people and a land area of 314.7 square miles. One thing that's unique about Kansas City when compared to the other cities we've looked at so far is how much this city's population density has increased in the past decade or so. In fact, since 2010, the city's population density has increased by 7.54%, which is pretty significant. This reflects larger trends seen in Kansas City, as the city's seen a fair amount of growth in recent years. Go Banking Rates, for instance, recognized Kansas City's growth and noted that its affordability may be a contributing factor. However, most people seem to be moving to the larger metropolitan area and not the city itself. For example, Kansas City's city center has seen a decline recently, while the suburban areas surrounding Kansas City have shown significant increases in their population. One potential cause for the lack of growth in the city center may be due to crime. In 2020, for instance, Kansas City saw a sharp increase in its crime rate, and in fact had the 8th highest violent crime rate in the country. Unfortunately, this doesn't appear to be an isolated incident unique to 2020, as Niche has given Kansas City a current crime rate of a C-. Number 4. Nashville, Tennessee. Like we saw with Virginia Beach, Nashville gets a lot of tourists, so this city may feel like it's actually more crowded than it really is. It's estimated, for instance, that the number of visitors to Nashville in 2022 was about 14.4 million people. However, the city's population itself is far less than this, at just under 700,000 people. All in, Nashville has a land area of 475.6 and a population density that's one of the lowest in the country when it comes to big cities, at only 1,456 people per square mile. However, I will note that Nashville has seen a lot of growth in recent years, and so its population density is actually increasing pretty significantly, seeing a 10.77 increase since 2010. It seems like this growth is only going to continue. The Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, for example, recently noted that there were about 100 people who moved to Nashville every single day in 2022. And while growth can often be good for a city, some are observing that the growth is happening so quickly here that it might become a problem, as it's contributed to increased housing costs and heightened commute times. Additionally, for any families out there, Nashville may not be the best spot, as the city's public schools are consistently rated pretty poorly. Furthermore, in a recent poll, 51% of parents of public school students gave the district a negative rating, though I will note that number has decreased from 62% the previous year. Number 3. Jacksonville, Florida. For those looking for a quiet city where you can enjoy 1,100 miles of picturesque shoreline in peace, Jacksonville may be your spot, as long as you're not trying to do that during peak tourist season, that is. As you can probably imagine, Jacksonville's location means that it gets a lot of tourists. According to the Jacksonville tourism page, for example, Jacksonville received a total of about 28,000 people every single night, plus another 30,000 daytime visitors. And when it comes to the number who visit the city per year, including overnight stays and those passing through for the day, that number reaches a whopping 22 million people. As a result, even though the city is actually very low density when it comes to its full-time residents, it may feel a lot more crowded than it actually is. For instance, Jacksonville's population density is only about 1,300 people per square mile. Its total population, however, puts it at one of the biggest cities on this list at over 970,000 people, while its land area is 747.3 square miles, which is only about 25% smaller than the entire state of Rhode Island. I'll also note that it's possible that Jacksonville may not be considered an empty city for long. For instance, its population density increased 10.75% since 2010, and its overall population has increased 2.3% in the past 2 years and a massive 18% over the past 12 years. Number 2. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Oklahoma City joins Tulsa as yet another place in Oklahoma that is pretty empty when we consider its population density. Here, there are only about 1,146 people per square mile, despite seeing a growth in its population density of 12.53% since 2010 and a current population of about 694,800. One potential explanation for this city's low population density is that Oklahoma City is pretty spread out, having a total land area of 606.5 square miles. That makes it the second largest city by land area on this list after Jacksonville, and makes it significantly larger than other cities like Tulsa, which has a land area of 197.5 square miles. Like some of the other cities we've seen on this list so far, Oklahoma City's relatively low population density may make it desirable to people, and in fact, the city has seen a population growth rate of about 2% between 2020 and 2022, and it was one of the fastest growing cities in the country between 2010 and 2020. On the flip side, though, there are some very real reasons for why Oklahoma City has had a small population throughout much of its history, and it seems like some of those have to do with the state of Oklahoma as a whole. For instance, a recent report called Oklahoma the second worst state in the entire country to live in due to factors like unpredictable weather, high rates of uninsured people, drug problems, and homelessness. Number 1. Anchorage, Alaska. I mentioned earlier that Oklahoma has a pretty small population, but Alaska has that beat by a long shot. In fact, Alaska is the third least populated state in the U.S., with only about 730,000 residents. The state of Vermont and Wyoming are the only other places in the U.S. that are less populated. But it's not just the third least populated state. Alaska is also the least densely populated state out of anywhere else in the U.S. Here, the population density is just 1.3 people per square mile. So, if you're looking for a lot of space, you know where to find it. Remember, for reference, New Jersey is the most densely populated state with about 1,283 people per square mile. These findings apply to Alaska's cities as well, and in particular, the city of Anchorage. Anchorage has a population of a little over 287,000 and a total land area that's pretty big at 1,706.9 square miles. That means that it has a population density that's significantly lower than the other cities on this list at only 168 people per square mile. For starters, Anchorage is pretty isolated, and because of its location, there aren't really a ton of job opportunities, especially for those looking to work in less conventional industries. Alaska is also incredibly expensive and is the fifth most expensive state to live by its cost of living index. What about why these 10 capital cities are empty?